Dr. Banner. Now might be a really good time for you to get angry.
That's my secret, Captain. I'm always angry.
Why do we like superhero movies? The first superhero movie was The Mark of Zorro, released in 1920. Since then, countless superheroes have graced the silver screen, leading to literally billions of dollars spent at the box office every year, with some amazing films, and some less so.
Seriously, what the hell's wrong with you people?
Our obsession with these characters has extended far beyond what we once imagined it ever could be. In 1944, during the height of World War II, it's appropriate that we got our first taste of what was yet to come. From a small-time comic book publisher named Timely Comics, Captain America took on the Scarab and his terrible poison gas. In the film, the war hero fights with a gun, and his signature shield is nowhere to be found, but it was the first in a long line of movies based on comic serials. Captain America is set to grace the silver screen once again this coming May in the new Avengers Infinity War, and the character has gone through some major changes since then, and he's not the only one. Superman made his first silver screen appearance in Superman and the Mole Men in 1951, and it seems apt that these first comic book movie superheroes later became known as the American Boy Scouts. That brings me to the title of this video. Why do we like superhero movies? Like the comics they were based on, these characters embody a great, all-American good guy that can stand up to anything. And it's appropriate that this sentiment came about in the wake of the Second World War. We as Americans felt like we could stand up to anybody and take down all the bad guys. And in World War II, there were some very real bad guys. This was such a cultural belief in America that the Nazis became Captain America's biggest antagonist in the comic series. For a while afterwards, superheroes found a place on television through the 60s and 70s, and honestly, this made more sense in an art form serialized in weekly comic book releases. These early television heroes were often produced in the style of crime and mystery shows. Adam West's Batman television show was played like a tongue-in-cheek crime drama, making light of the characters' flamboyant outfits while fighting against the villain of the week. And yes, using shark repellent. Despite this, it was considered the biggest TV phenomenon of the 1960s. Characters like Spider-Man, Batman, and Superman were unopposed good guys, and they fought against the bad guys, supervillains and evildoers. There was a clear dichotomy between what was good and what was bad. This was a time during the Cold War where we as America saw ourselves as the superhero who had to save the weak and downtrodden, and the evil communists were there to bring about the destruction or enslavement of the world we know. The antagonists of these shows wanted to upset the status quo, and it was the job of the heroes to keep the world safe from that disruption. The 1980s and 90s saw a rise in the superhero movie once again, with a string of Superman and Batman films. Much of the success of these movies was likely a spillover from the early television shows. The parents who grew up watching those shows on TV as children, there's always been nostalgia. The superheroes on TV transitioned from traditional comic heroes like Batman and Spider-Man to some new IPs like Thundercats, He-Man, and Captain Planet. This era was an era of dichotomy. The heroes had unique villains they had to fight over and over again, defeating them and bringing about peace, but only for a short time. The villains would always return in one way or another. Superhero movies like Christopher Reeve's Superman series and Tim Burton's 1989 Batman tried to move away from some of the campy, sarcastic tones of their television predecessors. They tried to portray some real struggles of a hero in a slightly darker setting. This America was one that had been dealing with the Cold War for more than 3 decades now, and it seemed like no matter what challenges they overcame, another would pop up in its place. Another Korea, another missile crisis, another Vietnam. This was a world that stayed optimistic, that kept fighting, but never seemed to find real peace, just like the heroes they idolized. At the turn of the century, we began to see superheroes who were much more human. Sam Raimi's Spider-Man, the X-Men franchise, and Christopher Nolan's Batman series all dealt with very human characters, superheroes that were also human underneath their masks. Even 2006's Superman had a conflict of character. Was he a human or an alien? We saw superheroes fail. We saw these characters fight real human emotions like fear and loss. They were no longer beings with amazing power that could keep fighting for good just because that's what they were supposed to do, but characters who questioned whether what they were doing was even the right thing to do. These were characters that were more human than super. We saw this shift in a post-9/11 world, one where we saw that America was a country that could be beaten. We had flaws and we weren't an unstoppable force. We questioned if what we were doing was right, just like these characters. We were reminded that we too were human. Marvel Studios began a new wave of superhero movies with the release of Iron Man in 2008. But what truly changed the game was when their long-term planning coalesced in 2012's Avengers. The Avengers opened with the largest box office weekend in history. It was a superhero film, but it had interesting characters with a story that Marvel had built up over the last 4 years, and it was funny. It used tropes of classic superhero mythology and turned them into satire, but this wasn't the same humor as the 1960s Batman television show. It wasn't a joke at the expense of the characters, but in fact the opposite. It was a critique of the superhero genre, while also following these same superhero tropes.
Smash.
This idea expanded upon the humanized hero. Thor was just a fun buddy that you get drinks with after work. Steve was the guy who was behind on the latest TV shows and just wanted to hang out. Tony is the arrogant pretty boy who you hang out with because he's a great wingman. These were people we know in our own lives, while creating amazing action set pieces that bring us into the world of real superheroes. The Hollywood Reporter said, quote, "The Save the World story is one everyone's seen time and time again, and the characters have been around for more than half a century in 500 comic book issues. But Whedon and his cohorts have managed to stir all the personalities and ingredients together so that the resulting dish, however familiar, is irresistibly tasty again." These characters fight what it means to be a hero, and even what it means to be a villain. The characters fight against one another, and this sentiment is the same as the one we fight as Americans. We aren't sure what's right and what's wrong, but that doesn't mean we can't laugh about it along the way. When we need to take action, we do. We're willing to don the mask of the superhero, even though we may not be fighting the bad guys. We're fighting what we believe in, and what we believe is right. And that's why we love superheroes so much. Superheroes embody us as a community. They create a mirror of our society, and we project ourselves onto these larger-than-life characters because they reflect our own ideals and beliefs. This is one reason the Justice League films have had so much trouble connecting with audiences in the same way. We no longer associate with the stoic Boy Scout Superman or the brooding seriousness of Ben Affleck's Batman. And that's not to say we can't connect with them. Many times it's because we don't relate to the conflicts that bring these characters to make the choices they do. We lose that connection with the hero. I won't go into this too much. There are plenty of other videos on the internet that do. But what I'm trying to get at is we all like superheroes because at our core we want to be those heroes. And seeing them the way we view ourselves makes each one of us feel a little more super. Hey guys, thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. Make sure to slam that like button and hit the subscribe for more. And thanks for watching this episode of Pizza Slice Pop Culture.